What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. The best early round running backs to target in the 2019 fantasy football season. And what I consider early is the first 4 rounds of a 12-team league. So these are players going in that range, and it doesn't mean that I don't like other running backs. You know, there's a ton of great running backs going early in the drafts, but these are the ones that I want to target the most in that range. So let's start things off with the stat of the day. And yesterday's winner was up and then a bunch of numbers. And the answer was Matt Breida. And you guys know you can follow who's in the lead on our website, although it's essentially one big tie at this point in the offseason. So today's stat: among all wide receivers with at least 35 targets, who had the most fantasy points per touch last season? Also, remember that you can have my rankings and download my projections for both the draft and the regular season on our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. But let's start this, and I want to start off with all of the top 5 running backs. I'm not going to go in depth, don't you worry about that, but I want to just say that all of the top 5 you should be targeting, and you shouldn't even be considering a wide receiver in that range unless you're playing in some weird format that heavily favors wide receivers ahead of running backs. I'm not even talking about PPR. In any format, realistically, target the top 5 running backs in the first 5 picks. For me, as of right now, it's Saquon, Kamara, McCaffrey, Zeke, and David Johnson in that order for half-point scoring. I've played around with Zeke and David Johnson, but right now I do have Zeke at 4 ahead of David Johnson. But realistically, you want all these guys. That should be pretty obvious. So what I want to do is go over each one of them, and all I'm going to say is a positive and a negative. So a point for and a point against them, because we all know that not every running back or every player in this draft is perfect. There are great things about everyone, but there are also negative aspects that need to be brought up. So each one of them, I'm just going to say one sentence positive, one sentence negative, and then we'll go into, I believe I have 5 other running backs I'm going to talk about. So Saquon Barkley just posted over 2,000 yards and 15 touchdowns as a rookie in a terrible offense. That's positive. The negative: the offense is going to be even worse this season, so his touchdowns are capped. Alvin Kamara. Positive is he has the highest touchdown projection of all players due to his massive red zone role in an elite offense. The negative: he doesn't have as much rushing upside, so he does need those touchdowns to remain elite. Christian McCaffrey. Positive: most receptions ever for a running back over their first 2 seasons. Negative: Cam Newton does vulture touchdowns, which caps his upside and leads to more variance between the weeks where he has touchdowns. Ezekiel Elliott. Positive: averaging 2,000 yards and 12.5 touchdowns in seasons where he isn't suspended. Negative: he gets suspended sometimes, and there's always that risk with suspension, which is less than ideal with a top 5 pick. Lastly, David Johnson. High reception and touchdown upside on a team likely to finish in the top 5 in plays run. Negative: his quarterback and his offensive coordinator are unknowns in the NFL. Now, let's dig a little bit deeper into some players. So now everyone's going to be going in the 2nd and 3rd rounds, I think. I don't even think I included a 4th round pick in here. Oh, no, I have one 4th round pick. We've got 2 seconds, 2 thirds, and 1 4th round pick. The 2nd is a mid-2nd round pick in Damien Williams. His only competition on the roster, of course with running backs, is Carlos Hyde, and it's hardly a competition. Hyde has never been impressive. He's failed to eclipse 1,000 yards, even with multiple seasons over 215 carries. He's also a terrible receiver out of the backfield. His career catch percentage is low, and he has an extremely high drop rate. In fact, in the only season that he had more than 35 carries, he led all running backs in drops by a mile. And he has an embarrassingly low yards per reception over his career. Williams is an excellent receiver out of the backfield. His worst season in yards per reception is 6.8. Hyde's best was 6.0, and his career average is 5.6. Williams' catch percentage is 78%. Hyde's is 71%. Hyde has 3 career receiving touchdowns. Williams has 4 receiving touchdowns in his last 6 games. We know that Andy Reid has historically gone with 1 lead back, resulting in 12 running back 1 finishes in his 20 seasons as head coach. Reports out of camp back the obvious that Damien Williams is the best running back on that roster and will be the lead back this season. If that is true, and he is the running back 1 in week 1, then the only possible way that he doesn't finish as a running back 1 at the end of the season is due to injury, and he could easily finish in the top 5. So he is an incredible second-round pick. Next guy I want to talk about is Nick Chubb, and he's a mid to late second-round pick, kind of going around that like 19, 20, 21 range. And I know that Dare included him in his running backs to avoid video, but I 100% disagree with that take. The Browns project to be an elite offense this season, and Chubb is going to be the early down and goal line back in weeks 1 through 8. That is something that not a person on this planet will dispute. That's what's going to happen in weeks 1 through 8. That is going to result in at least a top 7 running back in any format, and it would not be surprising at all if he entered the top 3 during that stretch. He's going to get you into the fantasy playoffs because where he's going, you'll be able to pair him with one of the other top running backs. I mean, imagine starting off your draft with Zeke and Chubb, or Kamara and Chubb, or David Johnson and Chubb. Some combination of that is absolutely possible, and the weekly floor and upside combining 2 players like that is absolutely insane. And consider this, I mean, we have no idea how much Hunt is going to be used when he returns in week 10. But we do know for a fact that Chubb was PFF's top-rated running back last season, was 4th in yards per carry after contact, was 4th in evaded tackles, and he converted 5 of his 7 carries inside the 5-yard line into touchdowns, which is one of the highest rates in the league. He also finishes the running back 16 with over 1,000 total yards, even after not starting until week 7. And that was with last season's offense with Baker as a rookie. This season, they should be an elite offense, so he has 20 touchdown upside. Now, he's not likely to get 20 touchdowns, no one will ever tell you that, but it's absolutely within his range of outcomes. I would honestly be shocked if Hyde takes much work away from Chubb this season. You don't just throw in a running back that's been away from the team since the preseason in week 10. I mean, you just don't do that as a coach. It doesn't really matter how good that running back is. You're in week 10, and you haven't seen this guy since the preseason. You're just going to throw him in and be like, let's just give him Chubb's carries. No, that's not going to happen. At that point in the season, they're likely to be fighting for playoff seeding. So unless Chubb's hurt when he returns, Hyde's going to be eased into this offense and not see that much work at all. You know, and something else you might be concerned with is Duke Johnson, right? I mean, Duke Johnson's a great receiving back, but he only had 40 targets when Chubb took over, and there's a very real chance that he gets traded at some point this season. Could it be before week 1? Could it be closer to when Hunt returns? I mean, I don't know. I'm not in the front office, but I would be a little bit surprised if he was on the team to end the season. So we're probably not going to get a full season of Duke Johnson taking receiving work. So that just raises the ceiling for Nick Chubb even further, and it's already massive. So what you have is an elite running back who's great when they get close to the goal line on an elite offense. And people are scared to draft him because another running back might return in week 10. I mean, don't worry about week 10. I mean, at that point, Chubb's going to be, a top 7, top 5 running back, and your team will have already clinched a playoff berth. You're not Nostradamus. Like, you have no idea what this league is going to look like. You have no idea what your roster is going to look like come week 10. But what we do know is that the Browns are going to score a ton of points this season. And for most of the season, Chubb's going to get the lion's share of the carries with legitimate top 5 upside and extremely high floor to go with it. So don't not draft him because, maybe in week 10, someone might come into the offense. We have no idea what that's going to look like, but I can guarantee you that Hunt's not going to take over as a lead back. That's a personal guarantee unless, of course, Chubb is hurt, because then he won't be able to play and they'll have to play Hunt. But don't hesitate for even a second when you're drafting Nick Chubb, because for where he's going, you'll be able to pair him with another elite running back. So you're going to dominate at the most important position for the majority of the season, and for all we know, the entire season. So I absolutely will be drafting Nick Chubb this season. Another guy I like drafting, a lot about Aaron Jones and his appeal is where he's going in drafts. He's going in that mid-third round, so you don't need to draft him as your running back 1. If he was my running back 1, I mean, I better have 2 elite wide receivers going with that. But he's going in that perfect area where he can be like your running back 3 or he could be your running back 2 paired with an elite wide receiver. Jones led all running backs in yards per carry last season, and he was 6th in percentage of carries that gained positive yards. In fact, he was tied for the highest in percent of carries that went for 5 or more yards, and he was league average in the amount of carries that went for 20 or more yards. So why do I bring those up? Well, there are cases where someone maybe not leads the league, but is towards the top of the league in yards per carry, but you're like, no, he's going to regress from that. All of those stats I just pointed out indicate that he will not regress. Being 6th in percent of carries that gain positive yards means he was getting past the line of scrimmage more than a lot of running backs. Being tied for first in carries that went 5 or more yards means he was getting really good chunk plays when he was given the opportunity, and the fact that only 3% of his carries went 20 or more yards, which is around the average, means that he wasn't just busting out like 3 total long runs over a season, and that boosted his yards per carry. It wasn't the long runs, it was the really nice chunk plays that are getting 5, 6, 7 yards. So this all indicates he's going to maintain, his very high yards per carry. I mean, he might not lead the league again, you can't just predict that, but he should be really high in yards per carry. He was also 11th in evaded tackles per attempt, and he was able to finish as the running back 23 despite getting just 40 or more snaps 5 times. I mean, in just 5 games, he was given 40 or more snaps. Jones is the best running back on that depth chart by a mile. Jamal Williams has proven to be below average running back, and 6th round pick Dexter Williams is fine, but he's extremely unproven, and there's zero chance that he takes early down work unless there's an injury. The Packers were also 15th in points per game last season, and in Rodgers' last 7 healthy seasons, they have finished in points per game 2nd, 7th, 2nd, 4th, 2nd, 15th, and 4th. It's a pretty safe bet to say that they return to like a top 5 to 7 scoring offense this season, which is obviously a big boost to Aaron Jones. So we have a running back that led the league in yards per carry, has pass catching abilities, and is now clearly atop the depth chart on a team that should get back to being an elite offense. He could easily finish as a running back 1, and like I said, he's going in a range where he can either be your running back 3, or he can be a running back 2 paired with an elite wide receiver, and that is exceptional value. So absolutely love targeting him in that early to mid 3rd round range. Another guy I really like targeting in the late 3rd round, mid to late 3rd round, kind of depends on who you're drafting with, is Kerryon Johnson. And speaking of yards per carry, Kerryon was 2nd behind Aaron Jones in that category. He also ranked 2nd in yards per carry differential when compared to teammates, and 1st in yards per carry above expectation. Johnson was also 4th in efficiency rating, according to Next Gen Stats, and he did so while facing 8 or more men in the box, more than any running back in the top 6. So the dude was efficient even in situations where he's not likely to be efficient. Remember, a large portion of yards per carry for a running back can be attributed to the situation. Where are they on the field? How many men are in the box? Keep disregarding completely who the actual running back is. A lot of it can just be, okay, where are they in the field? How many people are in the box? This is the projected yards per carry for this running back. And in most cases, it's pretty darn close. Kerryon Johnson exceeded those expectations greatly. It's why he has the good efficiency rating. It's why he has good yards per carry above expectation. There are also reports from beat writers that Theo Riddick might not make the final 53-man roster. And if that's the case, then Kerryon Johnson is going to explode this season. He was 9th last season in receiving grade among running backs with at least 30 targets, including 0 drops, catching all 32 of his catchable targets. Johnson had 32 receptions last season, even after only appearing in 10 games while getting over 40 snaps twice. The dude was given over 40 snaps twice, only played in 10 games, and he still had 32 receptions. He still put together a great stat line when he was on the field. Johnson is never going to be a 20 carry, 7 target player. The thing is, realistically, there are only a handful of players with that in their range of outcomes. I do hear people say all the time, well, yeah, but he's never going to get over 20 carries per game. Okay, so he's not Zeke. He's not David Johnson. But so what? Not many people are. What he brings to the table, what Kerryon Johnson can be, is a Theo Riddick, but with 195 carries. And that sort of player is extremely valuable. So if you see that Theo Riddick gets cut from this team, yeah, his ADP is going to climb, but it should. It should, because he is easily the best pass catching back on that roster. He's easily the best running back on that roster. The one negative is that, his head coach is awful. Patricia is genuinely one of the worst head coaches in all of football. I was so excited for him to leave the Patriots. So his upside is capped, while Patricia is still with the organization. But assuming Patricia can at least, approach close to below average, then he's going to have a breakout year. He has my 15th highest projection among running backs, and that's assuming Theo Riddick is on the team. I have Theo Riddick in my projections, and Kerryon Johnson is 15th among running backs. If Theo Riddick's off the roster, his reception projection is going to explode, and that's going to shoot him up to a projected running back 1, even with less than 190 projected carries. I even have him not being a workhorse, still giving CJ Anderson a role. He's still going to be great. Last guy we're going to talk about is someone I've talked about in numerous videos because his ADP is ridiculous. It's Kenyan Drake. And Kenyan Drake is going the late 4th round. Last season, the Dolphins were ranked 26th in points scored and last in plays per game. In fact, they ran the fewest plays per game of any team since 2005. I'm pretty confident in saying they're going to run more plays this season. And what did Drake do in the absolute worst case scenario last season? Well, he finished as the running back 17. That's the type of running back I want on my team because he can produce even when the offense around him is terrible, even when there's very little rushing volume. He can produce. He finishes the running back 17 on 120 carries. James White and Tariq Cohen were the only other running backs inside the top 20 with fewer than 160 carries. One concern that I've heard people bring up are the backups, Ballage and Gaskins. And okay, let's just talk about that for a second, and then I don't want to hear it again the entire offseason. Ballage was PFF's 110th ranked running back last season. He was 101st in elusiveness rating, 110th in missed tackles per attempt. The kid was tackled by the first person to touch him on 43 of 45 touches last season. That is impressively bad. This dude cannot make people miss, and he was not good last season. Then you have Myles Gaskin as the projected number 3. Okay, he's a 7th round rookie after 4 years in college. He is absolutely zero threat to Kenyan Drake. If you really want to stare at the depth chart and find someone, and you find Kenneth Farrow, and you think he's the number 3, okay, fine. He's not a threat to Kenyan Drake. Kenyan Drake ranked 3rd in evaded tackles per attempt last season, had the 3rd deepest ADOT among qualified running backs, was 8th in fantasy points per snap, and 4th in fantasy points per touch. I cannot stress enough that this is Kenyan Drake's backfield. He's going to be the lead back in this offense. He's going to catch passes. He's going to be used when they get close to the goal line. This is an offense that can only improve. They were historically bad last season. They won't be elite, obviously not, and I understand that. But any sort of improvement is a help to the running back in fantasy. And they're going to improve, and Kenyan Drake is going to be the lead back. So, remember, you can have my rankings, you can download my projections for both the draft season and the regular season on our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. But that, my friends, that is the end of this video. I hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, how about we hit the like button? How about we subscribe if we are new? And thanks for watching.